It's not easy to graduate from uni. You go from living the best life you can with all your mates within a 5-minute radius, dictating when you work and what type of work you want to do, and being able to choose what you do pretty much day in, day out, other than the occasional lecture. It's really not easy moving on and moving into the real world where you have to get a real job. This has always been the case, even before COVID-19. It's been difficult moving on from university life into graduate life. And you can probably argue that in recent years, it's been easier, with technology as the new norm and acceptance of people as who they are on the rise. It's probably been easier to graduate and move into the real world than ever before. But the COVID pandemic has seriously changed things. And actually, the general circumstances of graduates, including pay and satisfaction, have been on a significant decline over recent years. And I'm here to explain all of that. So firstly, and probably the most obvious thing that we can discuss, is the coronavirus pandemic. Now, the pandemic affected everyone in lots of different ways, but 16 to 25-year-olds were hit hardest in the career department. 50% of all 16 to 25-year-olds were furloughed within the first 3 months of the coronavirus pandemic. Now, this may sound absolutely great. At the end of the day, they were getting 80% of their wages. But the issue is, when you're moving out of home and you're starting your first career, for a graduate moving into London on the average UK graduate salary, you really don't have the spare change for 80% to cover all of your costs. This meant that lots of graduates had to turn to parents or find external ways of generating income in order to support their lifestyle. And I'm not saying that these people are financing their lives and spending money crazily. The truth of the matter is that as a graduate, if you want to live in London, you really can't afford it. At the end of the day, if you live further away, your commuting costs are massive, and if you live closer into the centre, the rent costs are completely astronomical. As a graduate living in London, it is very, very difficult to have any money left over at the end of the month, let alone if you're only getting 80% of it because you're on furlough. And following the last in, first out rule, graduates were the most likely to lose their jobs altogether, significantly more so than any other category. And all of this counts if a graduate can even get a job. The number of graduate jobs advertised across various different sites decreased by 60%. This is compared to the decrease of 35.5% in the total job market. So there were just less jobs going around, and there were more graduates applying for the same jobs. Now, I was relatively lucky. I got my graduate job confirmed just before the coronavirus pandemic hit. But even then, I had to go through 3 rounds of assessment centres and online testing, 2 in-person interviews, and some more online personality metrics, just to land a role. I can't imagine how much more stressful that would be, knowing that there are 60% fewer jobs and that there were even more people than normal applying for your role. So the next reason that leaving university this year has been so difficult is that mental health has been at a record low around the UK. Young people have 44% lower aspirations for the future than on average, and in fact 41% of graduates believe that their goals for the future are no longer achievable because of the setbacks due to coronavirus. That's just a few of the incredibly upsetting and morbid statistics around mental health in young people, but it's something that needs to be spoken about. Being isolated and away from your friends when you're starting a new career is difficult at the best of times. If you throw into the mix that people are finishing university in isolation, then it's even harder. So we need to be able to talk about mental health in young people. So as with every video where I mention mental health, I'll leave links to mental health sources and helpful sites down below in the description. Please check those out and talk to somebody if you feel you need to. One huge way in which mental health has impacted people starting their careers is that you feel so isolated. I can't tell you, I felt so isolated when starting my career completely virtually. I didn't meet anybody from my work in person for 9 months. It's so daunting to go into different meetings and to have no idea who you're talking to, having never met them, with no understanding of what the dynamic of the workplace really is. It is incredibly difficult to manage, and it makes for a very lonely situation. It's a proven fact that extended periods of time in front of a screen are detrimental to your health. And when I started my job, I was working 7.5 hours in front of a screen, guaranteed every day as a minimum. Add on top of that any time you might spend socially in front of a screen, and the fact that over winter everything was closed and you couldn't do anything. And having that impact the start of your career is extremely negative. Now, of course, that is something that's impacted everybody else, but it affects graduates even more because you don't know friends in the area where your job is unless you have other friends from university already there. So for example, for myself, I moved somewhere where I had no friends and couldn't meet up with anybody for extended periods of times. Sometimes I went 2 months without seeing other people and was in complete isolation where the only interaction I had was with a screen. So the next reason that graduates are worse off now is simply salaries. Especially with the number of students that have become unemployed and the competition for jobs after coronavirus, people are starting to trade down jobs earlier in their career. People are basically accepting jobs that are lower pay or lower qualification than they currently have skills because they just need a job, they need to be able to work. The issue with this is that it compounds over time. If you take a job that pays less now and has less chance of progression, in 10 years' time you could be tens or hundreds of thousands of pounds worse off than your peers. And this is something that people haven't had to compete with in the past. Realistically, graduate jobs have been in abundance and people could go for jobs that they really wanted to do as opposed to jobs they needed to do. On top of this, companies can also see how many people are applying for jobs, and since they're more competitive, they can reduce the salaries that they're paying because more people will still be willing to do the job even in that case. And this is just something that compounds with the fact that salaries in the UK haven't been matching the productivity and the growth in the economy. Since 1979, the UK economy has grown at 6 times the rate of increase of the UK salary. That means that basically you're putting more work in and helping grow the economy, and you're not getting anywhere near the reward that you should be getting. Salaries have cumulatively in that period only risen by 115%, while productivity has risen 253%. So you've more than doubled how productive the workforce is, yet you've just about given them a 100% pay rise, and that's all. So on the whole, the entire workforce is contributing more, but getting less for the work that they do. And this is something that is across all levels of workforce, but if you compound this with the negative salary impacts that we have due to coronavirus, it just screws over the graduates even more. One way to look at this that makes it abundantly clear how bleak the picture is for graduates is to look at the average graduate salary. In 2010, the average graduate salary was £24,000. A recent study found that in 2020, the average graduate salary was £26,500. Now you might say, well, that's pretty good, pay's gone up in 10 years. But if you adjust for inflation, that £24,000 in 2010 should now be £30,976. So that means that just on a pure inflationary basis, graduate pay is £4,000 worse off now than it was 10 years ago. And that's just considering pure salary. If we also look at things like rent and accommodation costs, so that's including mortgages, the difference is actually more like £10,000 per year for graduates now versus graduates in 2010. So if you graduated 10 years ago, the chances are your pay was basically £10,000 a year better than what it is right now for graduates. So the next way that graduates are worse off now than they have been in the past is student loans, and this is a huge one. Student loans have been on the rise for the past 15 years, to the point now where they are unmanageable. And actually, student loans are at the point now where I don't think university is worth the amount that it costs. So in my situation, for example, I did a master's degree with a year placement in the middle. Now, throughout my year placement, I was also charged interest on my student loan. So I've had 4 years of student loan plus the interest applied to those over a 5-year period at an interest rate of 5.4%. So you may be wondering, what's your student loan? Well, my student loan right now sits at roughly the £65,000 to £66,000 mark. Now, at this rate, this means I won't start paying off more than the interest earned on my student loan per month until I am earning at least £75,000 per year. And that's assuming I can get to £75,000 per year within the next 10 to 15 years of my career. That's not really that realistic when the average salary in the UK is £30,000 per year. So chances are most people who go to university simply won't ever pay off their student loans. And in fact, they're unlikely to ever see their student loan value decrease during the 30-year period that they have their student loan. Now there are some advantages to the loan system in the UK. For example, my loan will be written off no matter how much is left in 30 years' time. And essentially, it's a tax. It doesn't affect my credit score. But the issue is that this is essentially, as I said, a tax, and it compounds with the lower salaries that students are getting. So once students start earning over £26,725 per year, they'll pay essentially an extra 9% tax on their income. This means that if you manage to land yourself a really good grad job, which pays above that threshold of £26,975, you'll be paying more tax than the other people who'd be getting a similar pay but didn't go to university or got their university qualification before the fees were increased. This means that basically for the rest of my life, I can just add 7% onto the tax brackets that we have in the UK, meaning that my tax rates will always be higher than the people older than me who graduated without those student debts. So am I just here to bitch and moan? Well, not quite. Realistically, these are somewhat inevitable. If you want to go to university, you do tend to know what the fees are beforehand and you have to make that decision. And you don't really have the choice to stay at university forever unless you want to do loads of masters and PhDs and keep dodging the real world, which is obviously a route that people can do and is actually quite fun. But I want to draw out some of the positives of being a graduate in the modern society has given us. We have proven now throughout the coronavirus pandemic that you can work from home. You don't need to be in an office. This should give people more flexibility to live where they want to live and save more money because they can live in cheaper places and not have to worry about commuting to the office 5 days a week. We've also started to see the stigma against living at home and not leaving home when you're 18 start to change as people are moving back in with their families due to coronavirus and due to their living situation becoming untenable outside of home. This is a great thing, as the cheapest place you can live for most people would be at home with your parents. This period has also given us an opportunity to challenge the way that a 9-to-5 job works. We've proven that people can work remotely, and people can work when they want to. People are starting to introduce more flexible hours, more flexible work weeks. We're starting to see a real seismic shift in the way that we view our careers and the way we see our work develop. This should hopefully allow more and more people to take time with family, friends, experience the world, and live where they actually want to live and save enough money to retire earlier and enjoy their lives. So yes, on the whole, it's a pretty crap time to be a graduate, but we have the power and the opportunity to change that for ourselves and for future generations of graduates. So with that, I want to say thank you for watching. Please leave a comment down below on what you thought about this video. Hit the like button and subscribe if you are new around here. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.